Yo, did you guys see? Dadified got a scale freight car. Oh yeah, and then right after that, he went out and got himself a scale engine. That's right, he's ditching semi-scale, he's going to scale models, and he's never turning back. Nope. You guys don't know me at all if you think that's what I'm up to. But I kind of wanted to clear the air and talk about how scale and semi-scale can still kind of work in the same space. Or at least it seems to work in my space here with the secondhand overland. So yeah, tag along. Let's figure this out. See, a lot of 3-rail O-scale fans think of this when they think of semi-scale. It's all molded together, and the wheel is part of the plastic, and no moving doors, and the proportions are all wrong, and this is terrible. Kind of with you. This kind of post-war style, early semi-scale stuff isn't stuff that really appeals to me on our railroad either. And that's fine if you do, it's just not something that I go for. I like details. So then why don't I have a ton of scale stuff? Why don't I have huge, articulated, awesome, gigantic 072 curve eating engines on the secondhand overland? Well, one of the parameters when I was building this thing back in June of 2023 was to make it work in our space. In order to do a tabletop layout, Big Blue here, this sectional couch, had to remain. And with this couch here, that presented a design challenge. And it's not really a constriction because, if anything, I feel like it's made it more fun. This layout has two large 048 turnaround sections, both around this elevated line that I'm working on, and the section behind me with the switch yards. So even though there's 084 on this line directly behind me, 060 and 072 that are mixed in other places on the line, those two turnaround sections make it impossible to use gigantic full-scale steam engines. And that was kind of a problem, or at least I thought it was at first, because I wanted to do a Union Pacific theme here on our railroad because the secondhand overland is UP themed and a bit of a moving history lesson for me and my son to enjoy. And it's kind of hard to do that when you can't have big boys and challengers that are designed to go around those big curves. That is until I found the Lion Master line. And that really proved to me that you can get a lot of detail in an engine and still have good proportions and still make it around reasonable curves. You can still have 036, I think even down to 031 in some cases for engines like the Lion Master T1 duplex that I have, the Class A that my buddy Art has, our Challenger and Big Boy that we have here. Those Lion Master articulated engines provide big steam on layouts that typically couldn't accommodate engines of that size, while still not looking completely silly pulling stuff, even scale cars, to a certain degree. There is still a scale of semi-scale, and I've kind of gone over that in videos before. Check that out if you haven't already. But so if I'm not getting semi-scale stuff like this, then what the heck am I getting to satisfy my sweet tooth for details? Well, there's a lot of stuff from Rail King that I really like. This is a semi-scale boxcar from the Rail King line. It's a double door. Everything moves on it, unlike that other one that I had there. It's got a different wheel up here. And just the moldings in here are actually pretty crisp. Even though the ladders are molded in, otherwise this thing just looks pretty good. It's got nice detail on the top and even on the bottom. And that's a lot of elements that scale cars typically have because they usually provide more detail. But this thing looks right at home being pulled behind my semi-scale Challenger, semi-scale Big Boy. These look great behind those, but these also look okay behind other scale engines. Let's take this 260 Mogul as a great example. This is a legacy engine and it has lots of wonderful separately applied details on here, but this engine is actually kind of tiny. And it looks great next to other semi-scale engines. Even though they technically should be bigger than this, they are still just bigger in general. And so this guy can work really well around a semi-scale based layout without making everything else get dwarfed or look silly. And that's why I really like stuff like this. I also recently reviewed the 280 Consolidation. That's another great example of an engine that looks great in both environments. The 060 Dockside Switchers, those are great little super detailed engines that are scale, but because they're just even tiny in real life, they look great against other semi-scale engines here because they are still smaller than their supposedly larger counterparts. And that's a fact that I like to exploit here on the Secondhand Overland. This is one of my recent purchases. These are Greyhound Rail King cars for my Challenger to pull. And there's still lots of separately applied handrails on here. There's people inside these lit interiors with seats and everything. That's stuff that you'd normally see on scale cars. But because it's not the full length scale car, this thing not only still looks good behind my semi-scale Challenger, but it can also go around all of the 048 curves without having too much of a hangover. So this guy can really handle tight turns. So while other passenger cars that are scale size could work around our layout, I would have to devote a lot of extra real estate to clear these, the cars themselves going over those sections of the track. And so because I have, semi-scale cars, I can have things closer to the edge of the track without them getting knocked off by passenger cars that typically have, a longer overhang. So these work great in this environment. And I really like, especially these Rail King cars behind me. Again, more lit interiors. These ones don't have people. I'll be adding those later. But they have wonderful separately applied details and really look fantastic behind my Lionmaster engines. Speaking of those engines, they are not lacking in detail. If anything, they have the same level of detail as these legacy engines do. They've got separately applied handrails and bars. They have little, red dials and such for shutoffs and things like that. They look fantastic, and they really fit in the same space quite well, while still allowing me to work in our space here on the Secondhand Overland with those tighter turns that I mentioned before. So you don't exactly have to have all semi-scale for things to work. You can sprinkle in smaller scale stuff and have it all work. At the same time, you can have semi-scale engines pulling scale cars because some of these aren't gigantic. Now, if I had gotten a full-length, full-size tanker car, that would look a little bit silly behind here. But that's another reason why it works on our layout, because I'm not focusing on modern stuff. If I had modern diesels and modern freight cars that are like the size of people's houses, that would start to look a little silly. So thankfully, since we're kind of in this era of late steam and early diesel here, just that time era means that the cars themselves don't get too big and too unmanageable. So it all works really well here. If you got more questions about what we're doing, I would love to answer them, but it's been really fun blending scale and semi-scale, and I have zero plans to go full scale at any point, just because the space we have works great, and I'm already getting all of the articulated big engines I need out of that Lionmaster line. So other than the fact that they're not making a whole lot of new engines that work in that, I would really like to see more new Lionmaster come out that brings big steam to small layouts like ours. It's a secondhand Overland, so we get a lot of stuff secondhand. And I've been getting a lot of that from my friends at Trains.com. If you haven't already given that site a visit, check it out. It's a bit of a gold mine, and I love using it. I got a video here that goes over how best to utilize things on that website to look for things. I've got Lionmaster engines still in my wish list that are in queue, so that way I get a notification the second one of those shows up. And you can use my code DATAFIED at checkout to save $10 off your order of $50 or more. It's a one-time use code, but that's all right. I'd love the support. Thank you so much for joining us here. If you got more questions on what we're doing here on the Secondhand Overland, again, I'd love to answer them. So leave them in a comment down below. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we'll see you guys next time.
If you need my help, just ask for me.
All right. Can you get the switchway over there?
This one?
Nope, on the main line.
Oh, there?
Yep.
Switch.
All right. Now can you switch? Actually, that one's already switched. Perfect. We're going to back this one.
Into the yard. Wow.
Well, so Big Boy can go around.